Welcome to the Copeland Coaching Podcast, where it's all about turning your job search into a slam dunk. Your host is Angela Copeland.
Welcome to the Copeland Coaching Podcast. I'm your host, Angela Copeland. Live on the phone with me today, I have Anita DeCianni-Brown. Anita is the Marketing Associate at the Center for Career and Professional Development at Rensselaer Polytechnic Institute in Troy, New York. Founded in 1824, Rensselaer is the oldest technical institution in the English-speaking world. It was also recently ranked as the number 5 engineering college in the U.S. by USA Today. Anita, thanks for joining me. Well, I really appreciate you taking the time. As you know, I'm an RPI graduate myself, and I think we talked about this through our correspondence, but I loved the Center for Career Development when I was at RPI. I actually spent quite a lot of time there. How long have you been working there?
This past January was 23 years.
Oh, wow, that's great. So you were definitely there when I was there, but I think we discussed we're not sure if we met or not, but I bet we probably did. So in what ways do you help students there?
Our office overall, we have students, we start introducing them to the career development process starting in their freshman year. Mm-hmm. So we have workshops and seminars that are geared towards each academic level, so freshman, sophomore, junior, senior, and then grad students. And the programs are designed for that specific age development. There are things, for freshmen where we talk about their introduction to campus. So, taking their resume and moving it from a college application resume to, I want to look for a research position or, a summer employment position. Mm-hmm. So, we offer all the different workshops. We offer career counseling, and the career counseling piece covers everything from resume critiquing, cover letters, grad school application review, mock interviews, job search strategies, mm-hmm. Topics on networking and job negotiations. Typically job negotiations are something at the senior level, mm-hmm. Or senior year, and then grad students. So it's when you're looking for full-time employment, and just how you go about creating your own personalized job search.
Oh, that's great. When I was there, you had handouts that were on the wall along the side. Do you still have those?
We do. We have them on. We have them available as a paper copy, but then we also have everything on our website. The website really is it's a wealth of information. Everything from again, breaking down your job search, but there are the handouts. There are a lot of links to, being able to find things in different industries. We're in the process of having it updated, so we're still working on things. But it has been something that has evolved over time.
Oh, that's great. So, when I attended RPI, many of the students were very technical in nature, and I think it's probably become more diverse since then. What kinds of jobs do you work with students on the most? I mean, what kinds of jobs are people looking for?
From the student perspective, it really is, it's at RPI, it's all open, because we have the 5 schools of learning. So there's architecture, engineering, science, management, and humanities and social sciences.
Mm-hmm.
Then there is IT, which is interdisciplinary.
Mm-hmm.
And, the School of Architecture has a different recruiting process, so their recruiting process is not the same as, is not necessarily the same as, everybody else's. So, when you were a student, there was the fall career fair, spring career fair, and then we also have the on-campus recruiting. The School of Architecture also has a career fair that we had started, probably 14 years ago. I'm trying to remember exactly, but that is more in April, which is after what's our normal recruiting time. Companies, or as far as students, what they're looking for. It really it's hard to say because it varies so much. There are students that are looking for specific industries. So they may be looking for a job at NASA or one of the big aeronautical firms. There's the our top employers. So some students are looking at those. There are students that are looking even at smaller size companies because they're looking for the right fit for them. There are some that may look into other government agencies. For example, civil engineers may look to go more into one of the state industries. Beyond also going into maybe an architecture and engineering firm.
Oh, that's interesting. And you bring up a really good point. You mentioned the career fairs that you host, and I think the career fairs at RPI really got me interested sort of lifelong in going to fairs. And I think even for job seekers that are no longer in school, it's good to seek out fairs, especially large sort of national fairs. Because if you're having trouble, getting in touch with companies online, you can often get yourself in front of a recruiter at a fair, and sometimes they'll even interview you at the fair. And so it can be really helpful.
Yeah, at RPI, the fall career fair is the student-run career fair, so that's the Nesby Shep Student Career Fair, and then our office sponsors and organizes the spring career fair. But you're right. This is the time we even, as I had mentioned, we start introducing students in the freshman year to the career development process. And one of the things that we recommend is that they go to the career fair, even though it's their first semester at Rensselaer. It gives them kind of that first time of approaching a company. At each of the career fairs, we've had over 2,000 students. Typically, for one day for our career fair in the spring, there's about 150 companies that come, and students will be standing in line, and you really only have a couple of minutes to be able to get in front of that person and be able to make your pitch. And if you do that in your freshman year, you can start getting the nerves out of the way because, like anything, it's expected that they're going to be nervous. I think that even adults would be nervous in that scenario because you're standing in front of your competition because you're standing in line. It's a very loud place because very rarely is it in a space where you're in individual compartments. And just take the time and at least through RPI, we also offer the opportunity for students to practice. So there are workshops on your 60-second pitch and The Archer Center for Student Leadership for our career fair also comes in and does help students before the career fair. Actually, like they set up in the career fair in a separate location, and students can come in and practice their pitch before they actually go into the career fair.
Oh, that's great. I work with clients who are all the way into their 60s, and most people, I think, it's kind of an uncomfortable experience to talk about yourself and pitch yourself in that way. So I think that's a great point, because whether you're at a career fair or a networking event, being able to very briefly describe what you do and what you're looking for is very important. Yeah. Well, what area of the country do you find that most RPI students are looking to work in?
I think, again, they're pretty open to where they either are relocating to or just staying in. I would definitely say that the Northeast and Mid-Atlantic region remains pretty high. Definitely over 50% of our students go to those regions. Next, I would say the West Coast, and then probably following that would be the southern area.
Okay. Do you see any trends in terms of certain cities that are just doing particularly well right now? I always like to kind of ask that to people to see if there are certain cities they're noticing with more jobs than normal.
Not really. I mean, I would probably still say the highest number of our students end up in the New York region. There are. I'm trying to really pull from memory, because our annual report, the 2014 annual report, won't really be completed until after the end of this calendar.
Oh, sure. Well, I mean, that's helpful. I think, I work with a lot of folks here in Memphis, and sometimes they consider relocating because they struggle in our market. And so I think, a lot of those big cities are really the ones that they think about when they think of moving.
Yeah, and I some of the things that we talk to students about, when you're looking for your job, you can maybe look at a particular region, but maybe open up that region just a little bit, because there's a lot of things to consider. There's the cost of living, your entire benefits, the potential for a benefits package. But really think about how expensive or inexpensive it is to live in a region, and where are you going to feel comfortable.
Right, exactly. I mean, it's very important that you're happy, or you won't want to stay there.
Right.
Well, for those folks that you work with who are in college or graduate school, when do you tell them is the right time to start looking for a job?
Well, definitely if you're looking for your for full-time, the process should really start in the fall semester of your senior year.
Okay.
Again, different schools offer different programs and opportunities at Rensselaer. We have a very robust on-campus recruiting program, and just an overall recruiting program. So, the students started back to school at the end of August. The career fair is going to be held next week, and always the Monday after recruiting starts on-campus recruiting. So during this time period, students are submitting their resumes through our online system, and there's a pre-screening process, so the companies will decide who they want to interview. But overall, if there's a not all colleges have a non-campus recruiting program.
Right.
I would still say, start as early in the fall semester as you possibly can. By this point, hopefully they've had an experience in within their field, whether it's a summer opportunity or research or a co-op opportunity, and or even volunteer work. Volunteer within their field, hopefully.
Sure.
And and start looking at what are the places, what are the companies that you would potentially want to work for, and probably not look at just anybody, but look at okay, these are companies that I'd really like to work for, or these are areas or industries that I'm interested in, and then start creating your list, your target list of, okay, these are opportunities that they have right now. Do I know anybody here? And is there ways that they can engage with them? There's a lot of ways you can use your networks early on in your job search, and hopefully, as you kind of work with them, by the end of your, fall semester going into your spring semester, you're going to have a little more solid, hopefully had a couple interviews and, a prospect for a job opportunity.
Sure. No, that's great advice. And in terms of, when you work with alumni occasionally who've already graduated, do you see any kind of seasonality if somebody wanted to look for a job, is there a certain time of year that's better to look than others?
Not really, and especially not for, a seasoned, experienced person, because their job search is now. So, the university relations, when they come on campus and do campus interviews, they're looking at, okay, we're looking to hire so many people for the January term. We're looking to hire so many people for May. But we also have companies that are posting positions that, have the immediate openings. And, we have the job seekers, we have the alumni that are registered with us that are looking now. So there really isn't, there also isn't a tracking on those. Necessarily tell us, oh, okay, I did get a job through the system. They just use the services that are available.
Sure, that makes sense. That makes a lot of sense. Well, I think I mentioned to you before that I'm really seeing a trend, and I don't know that it's going to apply completely to RPI, but I'm seeing a trend right now where younger job seekers who recently graduated from college are applying for jobs that are kind of a little bit below their qualifications. I mentioned to you I have younger brothers who are quite a lot younger, and they mention that many of their friends who recently graduated from college are applying to be like a receptionist when they've got an undergraduate degree, and the receptionist position only requires a high school diploma. So I was wondering if you could speak a little bit to this kind of phenomenon. Like I said, I don't know that you're seeing a lot with students, but maybe you could give me some anecdotal advice.
We really we don't have that necessarily happening at Rensselaer. If there are students that take positions like that, they may not necessarily let us know because the job reporting to us is not a requirement. So that they certainly will tell us, but not everybody tells us what their future plans are. As far as that type of difference in what your qualifications are to the job position. I'm wondering if part of it is speaking to the, I don't know if desperation is the correct word, but, that they need to have a job because they have the bills to pay, they have the student loans to pay, and they look at it as this is an opportunity and maybe it'll grow into something. Mm-hmm. I probably wouldn't recommend that, because I just don't see that as kind of reflecting what the work that you're necessarily capable of. But, again, I guess that really comes up to individual, each individual. I've had friends besides, working at, talked with a lot of friends who are in job searches and kind of given advice there. And I've known of people that have been in this type of scenario. They've applied for a position, and the job description may have been presented in one way, and then they go in for the interview, and they come out saying, "Well, I'm very overqualified, and I know that if I took that position, I would be bored. I would not be happy." And I think that that's really an important piece of the job search process, is that you look at something where you're going to be happy.
Right.
And content.
I agree. And I think, too, you've spent a lot of time, energy, and money to get your undergraduate degree. I think it's worth taking the extra time to find a job that will truly use your skills and get you on the right path for the future. Because I think when you start out, say, as a receptionist or an administrative assistant, when you don't have to, it really, I think, hinders your future career. And the folks that I see who are doing it, I think they're, kind of back to the example that you mentioned earlier with the career fair and how you feel nervous. Mm-hmm. The people I'm seeing that are doing it are people who feel really nervous. And it's kind of an alternative to working through that. And I think it's really better to spend the time and try to get through the nerves than, to apply for something that's maybe not at your skill level.
And I think sometimes, again, it doesn't necessarily apply to Rensselaer students, but I have seen this with other individuals where, maybe they're looking at state employment. I'm going to use that as an example because you have to take a state test.
Okay.
So, maybe to get my foot in the door, I need to take this position because I have to take the test at this level, and once I do, then I can start to progress. Mm-hmm. So, again, it really is up to each individual person, and maybe if that's something that they wanted to do, but we don't necessarily see such a big gap of, you have your 4-year degree from this school, and then, accepting a position that you're so overqualified for.
No, absolutely. Absolutely. Well, another thing that I work with people about a lot is the online application process. I get a lot of clients who come in and they feel extremely frustrated because they've mainly been applying online, and they feel like it's a lot like a black hole. Like they submit their resume and they never hear back from anyone. Do you have any tips for job seekers who are struggling to kind of get their resume through the applicant tracking system process?
I think that one of the key things any job seeker really needs to do is to really read the job description. Don't just look at it, read it and understand what the company is looking for. And then you're going to, pick your keywords out. What are the important things that they're looking for? And then look at your resume. Every time you're applying for something, your resume and your cover letter should be directed to the individual job you're applying to. The job search is no longer a one-size-fits-all. And you really need to, you're not going to recreate anything on your resume that, matches the job, or you're trying to represent yourself that, I have this skill because you're looking for it, but I don't really have the skill. But look at what are the responsibilities that the company's looking for. Maybe it's in your in a current job that you have, or in your one of your previous experiences. Maybe something that you highlighted as one of the later bullets, you move it up. But really look at using the keywords that they are looking for. And another thing is to follow the job application exactly as they're asking. So if they're looking for, a resume, a cover letter, and 3 references, make sure you have those 3 documents, and don't have, extra references. Really be specific to what they're looking for.
That's a great suggestion. I was speaking to a group on Friday, and one of the questions that came up was, sometimes they said, sometimes I apply online for jobs, and it says that you can attach a resume, you can attach a cover letter, but you don't have to attach a cover letter. And the person said, I really don't like writing cover letters. If it's optional, do I really need to do it?
Oh.
Right. And that was, right. That was kind of my reaction. I think if you can attach a cover letter, you need to attach one, because if it's between you and another person and you're equally qualified, but they had a cover letter and they did a great job explaining their background, I think they will be the one that's considered and you will not.
Yeah, you really, I would always recommend using, including a cover letter, especially if you are applying to into a system that's has an applicant tracking system, and pretty much anything that you're going to apply to online has just that. At RPI we do have a different, we have a system, and I don't know if it's the same one as when you were there. We may have had Monster then, but we use Simplicity system, we call it now. And the companies sometimes they will ask for a cover letter. Students don't have to, but certainly if you're applying to something on somebody's website, always use a cover letter, because you need to be able to kind of expand a little bit and talk about in your it gives you the opportunity in your application to be able to take the experiences that you've had. You've looked at their job description, and how do you tie yourself to what you're applying to, what in your background, talk out your bullets, because you need to introduce yourself and find ways, and it's certainly in the cover letter that you can do that.
Absolutely. And I think you make a really good point there, because I've also had folks ask me the question, do I really need to talk about myself in the cover letter because everything's included in my resume? And I always say, well, there's no guarantee anybody's going to read your resume. You need to summarize yourself in your cover letter as well. Well, that's the online portion. The offline portion I really think about a lot is networking. And you kind of alluded to the importance of networking earlier. But, from your perspective, how important is networking when it comes to finding a job?
I've said this to many friends recently. The job search is as much what you know as who you know.
Mm-hmm.
There are, and we talk to the students all the time about this. Use your network. So it can be your family friends, it can be your neighbors, it can be members of your family. Certainly in a college setting, get to know your professors. Your professors have a lot of connections in industry.
Mm-hmm.
Definitely, no matter what school you attend, use your college career center, because they are certainly the ones that bring the companies in. They have connections, and they can help you through processes. And even if the college doesn't have an on-campus recruiting piece, they certainly have connections to help you, or can give you, maybe even connect you with alumni.
Mm-hmm.
But there's certainly on campuses there are networks that you can build, and then find out in your local area, is there a career fair? A lot of cities will host career fairs.
Mm-hmm.
So take an opportunity to go to those. Engage. You can network virtually. So, if there's a company that, is your dream company, or if there's an industry that, okay, I really want to go into higher education. So start looking at maybe your own target areas and start engaging with them. Use social media cautiously. Certainly not stalkingly, but cautiously.
Mm-hmm.
And, just engage with them. Their website is one bit of information, but, you can find out a lot about the company just on, the what they put out on social media, and, have conversations with them through social media. You can follow them, organizations on LinkedIn, on Twitter, on Facebook, and use those avenues. You can, a lot of schools have alumni chapters.
Mm-hmm.
Reach out to your alumni chapters and say, I'm from this area, or I'm looking to relocate to this area. I'm looking for a position. I have seen students post things on different alumni networks, even on LinkedIn. I'm looking for a position. I'm an electrical engineer. I'm graduating in May, and would really like to look for a position in Washington, D.C.
Mm-hmm.
That's probably as as generic as it would get, but I would probably put a little bit more, but certainly use those opportunities and avenues when you can.
Right. And, not everyone is open to networking online, but many people are. And I know, at least for me, I've been able to meet lots of people through sites like LinkedIn. And even we connected over Twitter and corresponded over Twitter for some time. And so I think it's just a real testament that you can meet and network with people in many different ways, and it is very important.
And that was before we even realized the RPI connection.
Right. Yeah, I'm not sure how I missed that initially. Well, you work with a lot of job seekers who are, getting ready to go in and have an interview. What are some of the things, the tips, sort of high level, that you give them in terms of how to prepare?
Again, I'm going to go back to the job description, but really understand what they're looking for. And then once you understand that, then what experiences do you have? Kind of look at the job description and think about what are potential questions that they could be asking. All right, they may be asking for to give examples. Well, what are the examples that you can use from either your previous experiences or coursework, projects that really could relate to it?
Mm-hmm.
So once you have that down, the next thing that I would highly recommend is that you take an opportunity to have mock interviews.
Mm-hmm.
So, reach out to somebody and ask them to help you with a mock interview. The interviews have really changed, and even like a lot of the questions that are asked. There are the traditional questions. Not everybody starts out with "Tell me about yourself."
Mm-hmm.
And there are questions that are not necessarily meant to throw you, but be prepared because they're looking for something.
Mm-hmm.
Your problem solving, and they sound kind of odd, but there's a reason why they're asking it. I've heard of, and this is just in many conversations I've had with recruiters, but if you could be a type of sandwich, what type of sandwich would you be?
Right. And
and another friend actually had an interview and was asked, help us figure out the number of street lights in Manhattan.
Mm-hmm.
So, really take the time, to prepare yourself for a lot of different questions that they may be throwing out at you.
I agree. And I think sometimes with those questions that don't completely make sense, there's two important things about them. One is that you stay calm,
Mm-hmm.
because I've seen job seekers that get kind of upset because they think, what's the purpose of this? I'm not here for this.
Right.
So the first thing is stay calm. And the second is to kind of talk through or explain your logic to them, because these questions are not questions that have a right answer.
Right.
But instead, the company's trying to get to know you, and they're trying to get to know how you think and how you react to things. So I think if you can keep, like you said, keep the purpose in mind, keep in mind that they are trying to discover something about you, and just go with the flow, I think on those types of questions you do okay.
Right.
I think another very important question that I've seen folks sometimes stumble on is the question, tell me what you know about our company.
Right. I think that that's an area where I'll call it the virtual world is very helpful. So certainly look at their website, and if it's there's a lot of companies that are international conglomerates. So look at maybe the department that you're applying to, or the area that you're interested in. Look at the website, find out information from there, and use social media again. So look and see what are things that they're talking about, because the website is one thing. They have certainly I would look at the news sections to see what is most recently happening with them, and then see what they're promoting on social media, because there may be something that you could say. I noticed that you were that you just, and I'll use this as a car company. But I just noticed that you were introducing such and such in this line, but try and find out what is new with the company, and then possibly there could be something that they could make a connection to, either with their coursework or with previous experiences. Oh, I noticed this I noticed a posting about this. Well, in my coursework or when I was doing my co-op or whatever the experience was, I did this, and then tie it to the work that they're talking about. Try and find those types of connections too. So, it's actually it's almost like you're studying to prepare for the interview.
Absolutely. And I think it helps you to answer the question both in the interview, but it also helps you yourself to know, is this a company that I want to work for?
Yep.
Because sometimes there will be legal things going on with a company. Maybe they have problems with discrimination. Maybe they have other types of ethical violations going on. And you want to know that. I mean, if you haven't been reading the news, you may miss these things.
There's a couple sites that are out there that there's the paid portion of the site, and then there is there's a free portion, and I'm thinking of Glassdoor as an example because I've seen people actually posting questions. I was asked this question in the interview, and employees will put information on there. Whether they've had a good experience or most of it's anonymous, obviously, but you kind of maybe get a sense of certain things, and take those opportunities to kind of look into things.
No, I think that's excellent advice. I'm a huge fan of Glassdoor, and recently I actually interviewed the spokesperson for Glassdoor for my podcast, and they talked a lot about these questions and all the data that's available now to job seekers. I think people should really take advantage of it.
Yeah, I completely agree because it is out there for you to see. And Glassdoor actually has a section where I was talking about the odd questions that you're asked in an interview. They actually have a breakdown of like the 2013, 2014 oddest questions.
Oh, they do? I'm going to have to look for that.
They do.
That's great. Well, as you're working with job seekers, are you seeing that there are certain fields that are hotter right now than others? I mean, are you seeing any trends?
I'd probably say the highest demand skill or background that employers look for really remains like with computer science, IT. It doesn't necessarily mean that that's the only thing, but if they have those skills, that's definitely a plus.
Absolutely. Right. I can definitely attest to that. My background from RPI is computer and systems engineering. And even though I've never worked as a computer engineer since graduating from college, having that background has helped me tremendously in many different types of jobs. Well, so after the candidate goes through the interview process and everything is over, is there anything in particular that you recommend that they do afterward as a follow-up?
Certainly sending a thank you note to the recruiter. I've seen recommendations on both, sending the handwritten versus sending an email. I don't think that I would have a strong feeling either way, but just make sure that it's personalized and that you are reflecting back on the conversation that you had in the interview. So, if you have the opportunity to take some notes, and if not, then as soon as you're out of the interview, I would certainly write down notes so you don't forget. And then within 24 hours, I would send the thank you note. It doesn't have to be. It certainly doesn't isn't going to be the length of a cover letter, but, a couple paragraphs, just restating your interest in the company, again, reflection back on the conversation, and maybe, tying it into, in our interview we discussed this, or you noted this, and maybe say, after thinking about it, maybe they, the job seeker has an idea, or, in thinking about it, it brought to mind, this experience that I had on my summer job. So, tie something in from the interview, and then close with, certainly looking forward to the future piece. So, if it hadn't been asked, and hopefully it was, what are the next steps? And, also, express your interest again. I'm very interested in moving on to the next round, and give the contact information. If I can, give you any other information, please contact me. And I would probably say maybe after a week, if they say, well, we'll have a decision in a week, maybe wait 10 days if you haven't heard, and then follow up. There's, and I know that people may be nervous sometimes about reaching out, but there's no harm if you certainly wait till past the time that they said.
Sure.
Give it a couple of days, because things do happen. But you can certainly reach back out and say, I'm just wondering if you have made any decisions on on who's going to be going forward, on who who you're going to hire, and just restate your interest. That just can be something that's kind of quick. Doesn't have to be a lengthy email, but just kind of restating your interest in the company.
Oh, I think that's an excellent point. I mean, I get a lot of questions about, is it really okay for me to reach out again? And, what's the worst that's going to happen? You may not get hired, but you weren't going to get hired if you don't kind of put yourself out there. So I think it's better to, keep asking. But like you said, wait some time after the deadline has passed that was communicated to you, for sure.
I had somebody that I spoke with about their job search, and it had been a long time for this person who had just hadn't been working in industry for a while, had owned their own business. And we were talking about the process, and she said that she had gone for the interview, but then that was it. And I said, well, did you send your thank you note? And she said, you really think they'd want one? Yes. Send your thank you note, and do your follow-up. And she said, I've been out of this circuit for such a long time. I just didn't think of that. And fortunately, she did get the job. But, I think that, the whole job search process it's a long process. And like you mentioned, people may be nervous about putting themselves out there. The worst that can happen is that you have a no response. The best is, yes, you're still in the process, but at least you have I can move on, or there's still a possibility here.
Right. It provides some closure, for sure. Also, one other thing I wanted to back up and ask you about is, attire? And this is one of my favorite questions because I remember when I was at RPI, we had very specific recommendations on what we should wear to interviews. And I went to graduate school on the West Coast, and I have a good friend there who had always worked in sort of startup environments, who I went to graduate school with. And he went for an interview on the East Coast, and not even thinking about it, he showed up in jeans, because that was what he would normally wear in California for an interview. And of course, the company was very distracted by the jeans, and he did not get the job because of it. So what is it that you recommend that students wear to job interviews?
I'm going to say that I'm still very old school. So I think that, first maybe looking at the academic year of the student needs to be taken into consideration because, I talk with a lot of parents and they're concerned, does my son or daughter need to have a suit in their freshman year for interviews? Freshmen and sophomores, they can be, nice slacks, button-down shirt, tie, definitely a tie for guys, and if possible, either a sweater or a blazer or suit coat. Females, suit is, pant or skirt suit is still the recommended. Typically not dresses. But, again, this is the on-campus piece. I would err on the side of being overdressed than, the scenario that you just described with your friend and being underdressed. But, there's also, there's some companies that will right out say, you don't need to dress up. In those cases, I would always err on the side of best professional business casual that you have. So, a cardigan sweater for a female with a blouse, nothing in, no graphics. Really look at yourself. I would still recommend things like, not too much jewelry, not too much perfume or cologne, but also present yourself as yourself, because it would be one thing, certainly if you go for an interview, and this actually happened to me many years ago. I had, I think it was just after I had gotten out of college, and I had gone to a headhunter, and just because I thought, okay, maybe this is what I need to do. And I was told to wear my hair in a bun because I had long hair at the time, and wear no makeup, and just told me how I should appear. And I said, well, I respect that. Wearing my hair in a bun, I will certainly wear my hair nice, but if I present one persona in my interview and then I walk in, completely opposite what they may have been expecting, that's not presenting myself necessarily correctly. But, I would kind of do some, if the company says, okay, you can wear, don't dress up, again, I would go with the business casual, but on the best possible side that you can go on.
Right.
No T-shirts. No, make sure things are pressed.
Mm-hmm.
Things even as simple as no scuffs on your shoes.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, look at all the details.
Right. It really makes a difference. It does. And I really like the philosophy of dressing very conservatively. That's really my preference. I will say it has only probably backfired on me in two different environments. One is in the advertising agency environment, because I've worked quite a few years in the corporate world. And when I would go into talk with an advertising agency, they would often feel very uncomfortable because they felt like, oh, you're a little too corporate for us. And so I know that if I, were to speak with an advertising agency, I would, be a little bit more stylish and maybe not look so much like I was wearing a black suit.
Right.
And the one other environment for me that I found it to be a little odd was I interviewed at a clothing company that's located in Santa Barbara, and they make these very relaxed kind of linen clothes. And they definitely looked at me like I did not understand what they sell, because I had a suit on. It was very uncomfortable again to them. So it's kind of understanding really the environment that you're walking into.
Right. Again, at RPI, we have the whole on-campus recruiting time, so suits are really what is recommended. And I honestly, in all the years and in all the students that I have seen, there have not been students that we've had to worry about.
Mm-hmm.
Now, times are also tough. So a couple of years ago, or maybe it was last year, we started what's called the clothes closet.
Mm-hmm.
So an effort with other campus departments.
Mm-hmm.
So we've had people donate gently used business clothing. Mm-hmm. And students can come in and borrow an outfit, slacks, suits, shoes, to be able to use either for the career fairs or for their on-campus interviews.
Wow, that's great.
Yeah.
That's really great. Well, in terms of pitfalls, I wanted to just ask you briefly, are there certain pitfalls that you see job seekers making, and what are those?
I don't necessarily know, as far as the students go, but I would say, maybe the mentality of applying for everything and anything.
Mm-hmm.
As we've kind of talked over this past almost hour,
mm-hmm.
The whole job search takes time.
Mm-hmm.
So, if you're applying to 50 jobs that are out there, how much do you know about, each one of those positions?
Mm-hmm.
Have you really taken the time to look and see, yeah, this is definitely something that I can see myself doing?
Right.
And I really think that that's a big piece of what people need to do, because hopefully you're going to be in this position for maybe if it's a new student 3 to 5 years, maybe it's going to be a little bit longer, and maybe there's the opportunity for this is their entry into the company, but then they're going to go. There's definitely mobility for
mm-hmm.
people in the company. So take the time to really look at, is this what I want to do?
Right.
And don't just apply to everything because it says a bachelor's in management or a bachelor's in mechanical engineering.
Mm-hmm.
It's, yes, this is something that, I'd really, I'd love it. And there's been students that, we've talked to and even, again, even friends that I've talked to, after reading a job description, this is exactly what I want to do.
Mm-hmm.
And it doesn't necessarily have to do with the company or a company name, but it has more to do with the job that person would be doing.
Right, exactly. I think, I completely agree with you. And I have also heard rumors that, for job seekers who apply to too many jobs at the same company, like FedEx is a big company here in Memphis, and I've heard that if you apply, for example, too many times to FedEx, that eventually you become kind of blacklisted from their system and they no longer continue to accept applications from you. So I think you're right. You really need to focus in on the positions that you really want to do.
Right.
Well, is there anything else? I mean, I really appreciate you taking the time today. Is there anything else that you'd like to share with our listeners?
Nothing really outside of what we've covered.
I feel like we covered a lot.
Territory.
Yes.
I guess just really know yourself, and I know I made this comment to you earlier, but you are being interviewed is one thing, but you are also interviewing, and this I think that this is kind of a footnote to preparing for the interview, and I forgot this until just now.
Mm-hmm.
But make sure that you have questions to ask the employer. There's certainly ideas that you can, kind of look at, if they don't know exactly what to ask, but go in with questions of your own.
Mm-hmm.
And, kind of know that this is, you're also interviewing the company in a sense, because you have to say, yes, this is something that I really want to do, or I don't know if this is going to be a match for me.
Absolutely.
And I think that it's okay to know that.
No, that's a very good point. It's really a two-way process. Well, if our listeners are interested to learn more about RPI, is the best way to do that to look at the RPI website?
Yep, they can. There is a contact form. I can give my email address. My email address is D as in David, E, C as in Charles, IAA @rpi.edu. I can send information about, how you can establish a relationship on campus, and, if they want to post positions, because we have not only the companies that come to campus, but we have the companies that post positions on campus as well, but they don't necessarily come.
Oh, that's excellent. Well, and for our listeners who don't know, the RPI website, which you included in your email, it's www.rpi.edu.
Yep, / DEPT for department / CDC.
Great. Well, Anita, thank you for joining me today. The discussion's been very helpful.
Thank you for your offer.
Thank you, everyone, for listening. Tune in next week for another edition of the Copeland Coaching Podcast. And if you've enjoyed the show today, please be sure to subscribe on iTunes to ensure you never miss an episode.
Thank you for listening to the Copeland Coaching Podcast today with your host, Angela Copeland. Tune in next time to get more great tips on turning your job search into a slam dunk.